Okay, Travis Wayne Goodsell with yet another Mormon video, warning Mormons, uh, educating Mormon critics, those who have been former Mormons, who have been misled by the lies of the church and have left because of the lies of the church, not because of the truth of the church, which is scarier than the lies that are used to cover up the lies. Okay, so I'm going to go right to the deep, dark evil that the church is covering up with lies upon lies. And that has to do with what is called the succession crisis. This is on Wikipedia, so it's available for anybody to read over. And no, Mormons, it is not fake news or it's apostate material. Wikipedia does not do it that way. It may be incomplete because the judges of the articles may not know of the information. All they want to know is that people are footnoting. And the articles don't necessarily connect all the dots so that you can see the big picture. That's where I come in, having researched it all. Okay, so Joseph Smith died on the 27th of June, 1844. Joseph Smith was considered the founder of the LDS Church, the Church of Christ, and then the Church of Jesus Christ, and then the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So the name has changed on several occasions. To give you a bit of history, 1830, Joseph Smith put forth the Book of Mormon. He did not talk about any first vision account or any kind of religious movement other than Sidney Rigdon's Campbellite request for a sacrament meeting with the sacrament, church services on Sunday with the sacrament. That came from Sidney Rigdon, even though Sidney Rigdon wasn't brought into the church officially, because there's some other factors that throw into question about Sidney's appearance on the whole thing, because there's Sidney's fingerprints all over the Book of Mormon, and you got to do linguistic research to identify them. And there are videos on YouTube for it, but I'm not going to go into that. And so Brigham Young came in 1833. Let me verify. All right. No, 1832 was when Brigham Young officially joined the church. Doesn't indicate that it was William Smith who gave him the Book of Mormon, so you got to find that through other sources. See, that's what I'm talking about. They don't put the whole picture on Wikipedia for you, so you got to go to different sources to find out the big picture. So Brigham Young, in 1832 was when he became a member, and there's the whole William Morgan thing that I'm not going to get into, though I probably should for purposes of the video, but it would take too long to go into great detail, so I'm going to sum it up and you'll have to deal with it. Okay, Brigham Young was Methodist. However, he was also in a family of Freemasons. His older brothers were in the Freemasonic order, and so was neighbor and best friend Heber C. Kimball. Heber C. Kimball became a Master Mason, which was only the 3rd degree out of 32 degrees in Freemasonry. The 33rd degree is an honorary title given to those who, well, it ends up being most, but you have to be 30 to 32 degree Mason in order to become a 33rd honorary. So Master Mason is not that big of a deal. So that's the background. And then you have the anti-Freemasonic movement of 1827, because of the mysterious disappearance of William Morgan in September 1826, which was around the time that Joseph Smith was claiming to be visiting Moroni, which was actually Nephi in his words. It was later changed after he died to Moroni. Joseph Smith Sr. was also a Freemason, and he was in the order or the lodge that helped secret the body or the person of William Morgan out of the United States. And the Masons that were put on trial and were given light sentences for his disappearance and his suspected murder, they were from Joseph Smith Sr.'s lodge. And for Freemasons, there were 2 types, 2 orders. One was the Grand Lodge of England, the other was the Scottish Rites Lodge, Scotland obviously. And it branched off obviously into England and into the United States, as did the English Grand Lodge. So the Smith family were a part of the English Lodge. The Young family and Kimball family were a part of the Scottish Rites Lodge. And that is crucial in understanding, because William Morgan was going around telling everybody in Palmyra and that region, hey, warning everybody, the United States is going to be taken over by the Illuminati, started by Johann Adam Weishaupt. It's a German name. He was a German, but he was talking about it to everybody at the bars and wherever, and he had been paid by the Bavarian press in Bavaria, New York, to publish 2 books. And that's how they did it. They paid him in advance, and so that they could write the book. And then you needed somebody who was skilled in transferring the paper writing onto copper plates to be utilized in the printing press. Yes, copper plates, Book of Mormon. So yeah, that's the whole connection there, and I'm not going to discuss it. So the Freemasonic crisis in 1827 had to do with William Morgan and his claims that the United States was going to be taken over and infiltrated by the Illuminati. And so then you have the Book of Mormon that talks about the same subject matter of William Morgan's 2 books. Not a coincidence. So Brigham Young was a part of the family and friend connection to the particular Freemasonic organization that the Illuminati planned to infiltrate and take over the United States with. And Smith family was a part of the competing lodge that helped smuggle William Morgan out of the country. And this is important because when the anti-Freemasonic movement happened, they burned to the ground almost all of the Freemasonic temples. They called them temples before the movement. They called them cultural halls after the movement. Yeah, cultural halls. Recognize that, Mormons? And so, yeah, Hiram changed his spelling to a different Hiram with a Y rather than the I, etc. And the last vowel also was changed to separate it from the Freemasonic spelling of Hiram. So, yeah, the church is not talking about the Freemasonic history of the church and how it came about. But that's what I've discovered in my research, is that Freemasonry plays a big part in the emergence of the church. And here's where we get the crisis eventually. So the background is necessary to understanding the succession crisis. And so one of the Freemasonic lodges, well, two of them actually, were the ones that the Youngs and the Kimballs used, plus their brand new one that they had just received the year before. So yeah, you can imagine the Youngs and the Kimballs were pissed. And so anybody who's responsible for the burning of their lodges, they want to hold accountable. And the Smiths are part of those who are responsible for the cause of the movement. So when the Book of Mormon gets passed around, and the Book of Mormon has all this Freemasonic symbolisms and coding in it, you know, Brigham Young begins to put the pieces together, though he's a little late on the draw, and he joins the church with the intention, obviously, to destroy the church, because they are the cause of destroying his temple. You destroy my temple, I destroy your whole religion. You know, that type of mentality. And so Brigham Young joined, and of course Joseph Smith had a commandment about missionary service, 2 by 2. Don't go alone. Must have a partner that'll protect you against false accusations and such. But guess what? Brigham Young wasn't really obedient. He went by himself and hooked up with Heber C. Kimball on occasion, but he went by himself. And where did he go? He went to all the areas where Freemasons of the Scottish Rites had their temples burned to the ground. So Brigham Young is converting those who have a grudge against those responsible for burning down their temples. So now the Mormon Church is getting all of these converts of people who are upset about the church being the cause. That's the infiltration. That's the first stage. That's how the Illuminati intended to do it. You infiltrate an organization that's popular, then you get those people to rise up in the ranks and then take over positions of power, and then you control all the businesses, all the government functions, so that everything is done the way you want it to. Yeah, it's done. Okay, so my using the LDS Family Proclamation to separate families is done. I highly recommend it. I'm going to pause while I process it. Okay, that video is now ready for you. And so let's see, I was talking about Brigham Young converting angry and upset former Scottish Rites Freemasons, and who were upset with the church and the Smith family and those who were involved in the organization of the Book of Mormon, who all knew about it, which involved the Cowdreys and Sidney Rigdon. And so you have what gets created within the church is a secret combination. You know, the Book of Mormon says secret combinations, Gadiant and robbers. And so they're using the Book of Mormon to do what the Book of Mormon warned about having done. And it was specifically a warning to the United States, but they used it for the church, to take over the church. And the group were called the Danites. And it's interesting because Dan in Hebrew is judge. So this group of angry at the church converts to the church called themselves the judges. And you can see very clearly what their intention is. They were judging the church and casting judgment by infiltration, rising to power, taking over the church. That was their whole intention. So in 1838, you have what I call, because nobody else is calling it that, nobody else is really focused on that, but this was the first instance where they struck. And it's the leadership crisis, not the succession crisis, but the leadership crisis. The leaders in the church were being extorted and threatened by the Danites. And so you have Thomas B. Marsh, who leaves his position as the president of the traveling 12 apostles. And you have David Whitmer, who leaves, and then in his fury believes that it's Joseph Smith that's responsible, and then writes a scathing article accusing Joseph Smith of having sex with a 14-year-old girl who was his maid, housekeeper. So that's where that comes from. She never got pregnant, so if he had sex with her, it's not true. So even though the church now is throwing Joseph under the bus and saying, well, yeah, okay, he had sex, but that means that we're legitimate. And yeah, no, church is evil, run. And I'm going to explain it if you haven't figured it out already. And so, yeah, Joseph is getting blamed for the Danites and their actions. And they not only chased out leaders of the church, because with the removal of Thomas B. Marsh, who Brigham Young excommunicated, he was only the replacement president of the Quorum of the 12, traveling 12. And I say traveling 12 because in the beginning there were traveling 12 and standing 12. Standing 12 were the authoritative branch. The traveling 12 were just missionaries. They had no authoritative powers. And that's significant, people, Mormons. And so with Brigham Young now ascending in rank and having achieved the presidency of the traveling 12, he then took it upon himself to excommunicate Thomas B. Marsh on the 17th of March, 1839, the very next year. And he had sent Thomas B. Marsh a letter saying, we're having a church court in the Traveling 12 as to your standing in the church. Again, he had no authority to do this. Joseph Smith was in jail at the time, and Brigham Young was acting as if he were the president of the church. So he's misusing his authority, which he didn't have at all. And so Thomas B. Marsh said, I want nothing to do with it. He didn't even bother to show up. And Brigham Young excommunicated Thomas B. Marsh. So George Albert Smith's claim that it was over his wife's skimping on milk scraps, no. That was a lie to cover it up. And then you have, it was either William or the other, I have to go back and look, because I think it's the different brother, a Smith brother. So I think it may have been Samuel who gave Brigham Young the Book of Mormon, and then William was the one in the Traveling 12, and Brigham Young kicked out William Smith from the Traveling 12 in 1838 as well. So when Joseph got out of prison again, Joseph Smith put back his brother into the Traveling 12 and left Brigham Young as the president. So you can see that Brigham Young is going to be a little upset with Joseph contradicting his orders to remove William Smith. So you can see there's contention between Brigham Young and Joseph Smith. So anything that Brigham Young says publicly that Joseph Smith is a great guy, you can't trust it. You have to look at the facts and say, hey, no, if this were to happen, Brigham Young would not be happy. So that's the leadership crisis. And that was part of their plan, to infiltrate the church, rise to power. So the leadership crisis was a necessary feature of the takeover of the church. And then you have the assassination, which was ordered by Brigham Young. He arranged it all. He set it all up. He was supposed to be on the East Coast, handing out flyers promoting Joseph Smith as president of the nation for the upcoming election. And instead, an eyewitness places him in Nauvoo, where he was threatened by Brigham Young to remain silent about the matter. And then, you have the famous assassination in Carthage jail, where the testimonies of John Taylor and Willard Richards, who were in the jail, are contradictory. And there's a problem when you have people who are supposed to be on the same team who contradict each other in their testimonies. That indicates a problem. Somebody, or if not both, are lying. And that's the research that started me on this journey to recognizing the danger of the church. Is because my third great grandfather, John Solomon Fulmer, was instrumental in exposing the deviousness of the assassination. And because he gave Joseph Smith his one-shot pistol. I assumed it must have been the six-shooter that Joseph Smith was later revealed as having shot 3 times And then John Taylor claims in his testimony that the other 3 were misfires, even though John Taylor has bullets that cannot be explained if people were shooting up to the 2nd level. Yeah, well, JFK has the moving bullet throughout the whole body thing. Oh yeah, it's always possible. God works in mysterious ways. No. And so, yeah, it's clear Joseph Smith shot at John Taylor. And why would he shoot at John Taylor unless there was something else going on that realized to Joseph Smith that John Taylor was not on their side? And you have Hyrum Smith also getting murdered, his brother. So, yeah, John Taylor was in a scuffle with Hyrum. Hyrum goes to the floor, being shot by my 3rd great grandfather's single shot. And Joseph turns after chasing out the mob and has 3 shots still left in his 6-shooter and uses those on John Taylor. The only problem is that Willard Richards also smuggled in a gun unbeknownst to the other guys. And while Joseph Smith was over the body of his brother, Joseph was shot from behind by Willard Richards as John Taylor cowered under the bed. And then that's when Hyrum Smith was then shot in the face, and that was the blood stain on the floor that the church had always promoted as Joseph Smith's blood. And then Willard Richards threw the body of Joseph Smith out the window, where he was then shot multiple times by the mob, who got chased out. So that's the actual assassination of Joseph Smith and Hyrum. And so Hyrum was sort of the de facto leader if anything happened to Joseph Smith. It was not made an official commandment or revelation. It was just understood that if Joseph died first, that Hyrum would take over and run things. Thus, the reason why both of them were in prison in the Carthage jail and were taken out, so that there is no successor. And with their death, who do the church members follow now? Do we just abandon the church, go our own separate ways, or do we follow any of these myriad of people now claiming to be leaders of the church? There were a number of them, but of course Wikipedia only discusses, well, actually they have others in here. They list the Joseph Smith family, and then Oliver Cowdery and David Whitmer also had claim, and other successors. But the 3 main ones that they talk about who had the most popularity were Sidney Rigdon. And Sidney Rigdon was in essence the instrumental person who established the religious and the religious aspect of the church, the ritualistic aspect of church service. Not temple service, but church service. And he coming from the Campbellites. And so the Campbellites and the Mormons have a lot of similarities because of Sidney Rigdon's influence. And then, of course, Brigham Young, he wanted to take over the church. How dare the church be the ones responsible for taking away his temple and so he wanted his own. That's all part of the Gadiant and robber tactic that Joseph Smith talked about, and Brigham Young followed it to a T. And then there was also a guy named James Strang. He created his own plates and claimed to have had a translation of them, and people actually followed him. So yeah, that was a fun character. I think they're still in existence in a small population of members. I'm not sure. But then, of course, you guys know about Emma Smith. She wanted nothing to do with Brigham Young, and so she was another branch off. And they formed the reorganized church, and now they're the Community of Christ, I think, because they've given up the Book of Mormon in order to become a Christian religion. And so I hope Mormons understand, with Joseph and Hiram dead, there was no successor. Section 107 is talking about the standing 12, not the traveling 12. And Brigham Young was not in the standing 12, he was in the traveling 12. So if we were to put this into modern application, which really isn't accurate, but it's the closest we can get to helping you understand it, if the prophets and apostles, and we'll even say the 70, are all killed off, so that there is no big B brethren leading the church, what you'd have is a secession crisis. And what happened, it'd be like having the person in charge of the missionaries, the missionary organization, taking over the church. And you can see that there would be a competition between the person in charge over temples, who would say, no, I'm the one who leads the church because I have the keys to the rituals of the temple. And the missionary one would say, no, I'm the one. And people would later, decades later, in their journals, write down, I remember Brigham Young standing up speaking against Sidney Rigdon, and I saw Joseph Smith appear in the form of Brigham Young, or whatever nonsense they were trying to pull off in their journal to legitimize the right of Brigham Young. That's how they were justifying Brigham Young as a successor, is that supernatural powers of, oh, he looks like Joseph Smith, therefore he's the successor. It doesn't work that way, people. And so, yeah, I'm sorry, Mormons. If you're actually listening to this still and you haven't just come onto my site to put a thumbs down like the one knucklehead does, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is an apostate church. That's the whole point of this, is Brigham Young is not the legitimate successor of Joseph Smith. But that's what they teach us, isn't it? There were other options, but none of them were authoritative from God. It's that simple. Church fell into apostasy. If Emma Smith realized what Joseph Smith had done in the Relief Society session of 17th of March, 1842, recognize the date connection? Thomas B. Marsh, when he was excommunicated. So 17th of March has a special significance in the church. And yeah, if you study St. Patrick, you'll also recognize more about this. And that goes with my video series on the Jewish Messiah, the man-child, one mighty and strong, as Mormons understand them. Section 85, verse 7. So yeah, St. Patrick chased out serpents from Ireland, even though serpents were long gone before that. But that's the myth of St. Patrick, that he chased out serpents, just like the man-child, or Elijah, or Jewish Messiah, or the man-child from John's Revelation 12. And so, yeah, that involves another topic of discussion. So, yeah, Brigham Young, not authoritative people. Mormons, you're clinging to a religion that is not authorized by God. The church is in apostasy now. There is no true church on the face of the earth. It needs to be restored by the Jewish Messiah, man-child, one mighty and strong that I was talking about. So, what are you going to do, Mormons? I mean, yeah, I know if you find out and you believe for an instant, you're going to have a mental shutdown. You're going to go into shock, as I have on the issue. Because what Brigham Young did, for me, it was murder that said, no, I want nothing to do with this anymore. But he started polygamy. He took away the priesthood from blacks. He took away the priesthood from women. He changed the temple ordinances. He created a new God. Adam God theory, you heard of it? That was Brigham Young. So don't listen to the church when they throw Joseph Smith under the bus. They're doing that to cover up that Brigham Young has no authority. They're using Joseph Smith as the scapegoat because he started the church. So if they can get Mormons to believe that, okay, yes, Joseph Smith did it, but we're separated from that now. They're lying to cover up the lies that they've had. And so, yes, it's horrible what Brigham Young did, but don't attribute it to Joseph Smith. The cause is Brigham Young. And Brigham Young had no authority. And so what did Brigham Young do when he took the surviving saints? Because, yeah, he murdered saints also. You don't send people during the winter time. You know they're going to die. And so, yeah, when Brigham Young came over to Utah, he became the king of Deseret. The king and the religious leader. The great and abominable church from the Book of Mormon. King Noah, Gadiant and robbers, the Antichrist. Brigham Young is the personification of all of those characters in the Book of Mormon. He used the Book of Mormon to do evil, rather than to use the Book of Mormon to do good. So, if Mormons are still listening, what are you going to do? Are you just going to stick with it because it's the church you were born into and raised in? I want nothing to do with it. I was born and raised in the church. Any church that espouses murder, no, I ain't having it. I don't care if you claim you're from God and that I was born and raised in it and have special tender feelings of my childhood. which not really. Moving to Utah, I've been constantly abused and attacked by Mormons. I mean, it didn't help that my first wife abandoned me and left me to suffer here in Utah as she went out of the country with our kids. And Utah refused to do anything about it. They separate families despite the family proclamation. And so, yeah, Mormon women, why don't you stick with your own kind, they would say, meaning that I should only date divorced women. And they don't see it as abusive behavior, abusive verbal abuse. To them, the Mormonism has ingrained into their hearts and minds to such an extreme that they don't love. And it's the same for men with the domestic abuse that goes on here in Utah. And it infiltrated the government here in Utah. Even though the United States came in, dethroned Brigham Young, took him out completely. They first made him governor, but then they removed him altogether. And then you have about a dozen governors who aren't Mormon leading the Utah territory before Brigham Young died. So he didn't remain king for long. But yeah, this church is horrifying. Literally demonic. Because it's run by the LDS principles of Luciferian doctrine. They want to save everyone by taking away their agency. Forced compliance as a deterrent. Sound familiar? So, yeah. Brigham Young is not the legitimate successor of Joseph Smith. It's that simple. So Mormons, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to stick with it and be complicit? What are you going to do about it? Because it's not being led by God. You're being deceived using emotional, psychiatric tricks, brainwashing, mind manipulations, unsound reasoning. You're being fooled and played. All for what? For these latter days. Because they know what was to happen under Trump, the beast of John 13. And I've already discussed this. You know, the mark of the beast in the forehead? If Trump is the beast, what is his mark on your foreheads if you bought his baseball cap? MAGA. That's the mark of the beast. MAGA. And no, it doesn't add up to 666. Image of Trump, which is shofar in Hebrew. That adds up to 666. And then the image of the beast that speaks blasphemies, that's Trump talking at rallies being covered on TV. The image of the beast, image, TV image. Because the image is not really Trump. We're able to see a transmission of Trump's image. John the Revelator was talking about TV technology. And then it also talks about having I'm not at the passage, so I'm not able to read directly, but it says you need the beast's permission to buy and sell. So what has Trump been talking about with regards to buying groceries, that everybody needs an identification specific to buying groceries. And Trump is purposely extorting from all governments throughout the world, threatening tariffs, changing NAFTA and other deals, trade deals. And he's also extorting businesses, taking stocks of Apple and Facebook and Amazon. He's forcing people to comply to him in order to buy and sell. John the Revelator was brilliant. Amazing. Wow. Even though it wasn't really John the Revelator who wrote it, but whoever did write it was right on target. And we know that it's now under Trump because in Revelation chapter 12, John gives certain arrangements of the stars in certain constellations that indicate a specific date in the future. And I've already gone over all those. I have the video for it. So look it up. So, yeah, this is it. This was the Illuminati threat to the United States. We're in it. And the LDS Church became an aider and abettor to it. And so Nelson's tweet the other week about the beginning of the restoration occurring next year and the year after, that needs to worry everybody. Because he's not authorized by God. He's not the legitimate successor. So what is he talking about? The church is evil. So if he's excited for something coming up next year, that should scare everybody. The church neglects the poor. They segregate. They discriminate. They hate. They're still racist. They're still sexist. So, yeah. The church is evil. They're not the legitimate successor of Joseph's church. In the name of blasphemy. So, yeah. I know this is true, and I say this in the... That's what Mormons do, to validify or solidify their claim that they're making. It's lame. All right, goodbye.